People of Reddit who have been abducted by aliens. What's your story?
When I was young, the neighborhood kids used to play dark hide and seek or dark capture the flag, often pretty late at night. Our parents were okay with it as long as we didn't leave the neighborhood. It was the early 90s, we were basically thrown out of the house on the weekends. Anyway, one night after the game was over and everyone had gone home, my stepsister and I were hanging out in our front yard, just sitting on one of those green cable boxes talking. At one point she stops talking and points into the sky and asks about a light in the sky. I turn and look and see it myself. The light was faint blue, and was brighter and bigger than the stairs around it. It was moving in ways that seemed impossible, and it became aware we were looking at it as soon as I locked eyes on it. I don't know how to describe that. I know that it was just this immediate feeling that it was looking right back at us. Suddenly, the light moved towards us almost in the blink of an eye. It went from being roughly double the size of a star in the sky to as bright as an airplane or helicopter search light instantly. There was no sound and the light didn't illuminate the surrounding area, which gave it a weird feeling. I tried to say something to my sister, but I found myself unable to speak and I could suddenly barely move. I just reneged, turning my head to see my sister looking very scared, also unable to speak or move. I thought I heard a noise and the light started shining on me, which made me turn my head back towards the object, and then I felt a piercing light basically blind me. I was like bathed in the blue light. After this things get a bit hazy, like I was meant to not remember it, even though certain moments are as plain as any memory from that time. I was in a place that was mostly dark, but there were lights that seemed to hover by themselves, with no visible technology, pole etc. holding them up. I don't know if I was laying down or standing up because there was a feeling of no gravity or downward force in any direction. I remember interacting with an entity that was humanesque but seemed to be different, like a beautiful person, but they had no male or female characteristics, completely androgynous but with very symmetrical and smooth appearance to the face and body. Otherwise, very human looking. They talked to me, but I was acutely aware that it was in my head and not out loud. It was like moments of being conscious with moments of haziness in between. I don't know how to describe it. I was aware that they were doing things to me, but I don't remember what, but I do distinctly remember a piercing device they inserted just behind my ear on my right side. It went pretty deep, but it didn't hurt. It just felt almost itchy for a second, and they told me they were taking a sample and depositing something that would allow them to remotely monitor me for some time. They explained that this was not the first time they had done this to me specifically, and that they would continue to do so throughout my life, and that there were literally thousands of people they were doing this to. It was a scientific study of some kind that they tried to explain to me, but I honestly don't remember the purpose. I was able to ask them a few other things in the moments of being conscious, like where my sister was, and they explained she was having the same thing done to her. I asked them point blank if they were aliens, and they found it humorous and told me they were humans from the future, but I got the distinct feeling that this wasn't the truth. Again, I don't know how to describe why I thought this. It was just a different feeling when they told me this versus the other things they were saying. It felt like a lie or simplification of some kind. After some time of being out of it again, I became aware that my body was bathed in blue light again, and the darkness started to recede and I was able to see the stars and the sky again. I don't know how long it was before I really understood where I was, but at some point I sorta came to and realized I was sitting on the grass, next to my sister, in the neighbor's yard about 50 to 60 feet from the original spot. My sister came to almost at the same time. We both immediately looked at each other and then to the sky, and the light was gone, but the sun was coming up. It was then we realized it had been hours. We didn't really talk about what happened, we just felt the need to go inside and go to bed before we got in trouble. It was years later before I ever spoke to my sister about that night, and she remembers much less than I do. She remembers seeing the light, being blinded by it, and then feeling weird, and then waking up beside me. To this day she has explained it away by us seeing a helicopter in the sky and just falling asleep because we were tired. She won't discuss it beyond that. I honestly had forgotten about this event until 2 years ago when my wife mentioned that I had a spot behind my right ear that kinda looked like a burn mark or a scar, but also like a pimple/mole. She likes to pop things and was dying to let me let her try to pop it. When she reminded me of it, the memories of the event flooded back into my head and I was a bit emotional but agreed to let her mess with it. She tried to pop it but said nothing came out. It's still there, and looks exactly as she describes it, kinda like a mole but also kinda like a scar. I've had MRIs and other scans throughout the years but nothing has ever shown up, so I have no idea what it is or if anything is inside there. I try to not think of it now because although I wasn't scared at the time, it is unnerving to think about now. That's my story as honestly as I remember it.
I don't expect anyone to believe me. I've tried telling this to several of my friends and once to my dad, but they always thought I was just joking around or something. I wish I was. It was 2009. I was 13. I was staying up late on the family computer on a Friday night, playing some flash game or something. I remember my mom had just gone to bed 10 minutes prior. I vividly remember typing in half the URL to addicting games when I heard it. This weird silence. It's hard to explain, but all sound disappeared except for the sounds of my fingers on the keys. No crickets outside, no wind, not even the sounds of my loud computer in the room. I stopped and sat there for a second wondering if there was something wrong with me. I remember worrying I was having a stroke or something. Then I was there. This huge space. Pitch black. I could barely make out the edges of the room, but it was vaguely metallic. It was freezing. It took me a couple minutes just laying there for it to sink in what was happening, but I was floating in this giant room staring up at where the ceiling should be. There were no lights anywhere, but somehow the small area I was hovering in was illuminated. I remember kind of looking around and taking it all in a sort of fugue state until sound came back. Only now there was this strange hum that was sort of going up and down in pitch slowly, kind of like a motor but softer and more harmonic or something. I don't really know how to describe it, but it was like there were multiple layers stacked like a chord rising up and down in this weird dissonance that made me really uneasy. When I snapped out of it, I took this huge breath and my adrenaline kicked in. I tried moving, but I could only move my head. My clothes were still on, but I was just floating there, head whipping around trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. I was fully awake, possibly more awake than I've ever been since. I can't tell you how intense the fear was. Then this sound of breathing came from behind me, and what sounded like heavy, hard footsteps on a metal surface. Loud, deep exhales with almost this sort of vibration to them. I turned my head as best I could to try and see, but it was coming from beyond the light. My heart was beating so fucking hard I thought I was going to die. I started to see a figure emerging, slowly at first. My brain was having trouble registering it. It wasn't human. It was big. As it approached the light, I started to make out the features. It was a horse. This fucking brown horse with black hair slowly walked into the light and past me. I remember feeling the heat from its body as it did. It was so close. Then it went to what looked like a door at the edge of the room closest to my feet, just where the light was starting to fall off again, and it stood up. I heard a sort of zipper-like sound, and all of a sudden the horse collapses like skin to the ground, revealing a small humanoid figure. It turns around and looks at me with huge black eyes, then just walks out the door. Before I could process any of this, there was suddenly a presence beside me, and I turned my head just in time to see another humanoid thing putting this ball with lights on it over my face. Then I woke up, but I didn't wake up in my bed. I was outside my house, a couple kilometers away. My clothes were a little ripped and dirty, and I had this awful headache. I slowly got up and looked around. I was down this dirt road near my house. We lived in the countryside, and just outside the driveway of one of our neighbors. When I realized where I was, I just walked back to my house, took an Advil, and went to bed. At the time I just wanted the night to be over, and I had no idea what happened. But as time has gone on, I know for a fact that what I experienced was real. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't sleep paralysis or sleepwalking or that thing Mike Birbiglia has. It was so incredibly real. I didn't tell anyone about it for a long time. Years. And any time I see a horse on someone's farm or whatever, I think about that night. I think about telling them. But what would they say?
coming back from ice fishing, the last day of the year to have ice houses on the lake. My father, sister, and I were in his truck and his friend was towing the ice house. We were coming around the corner and his friend was a little way back. I remember watching his headlights disappear around corner in the passenger mirror. A few seconds later, I looked at the little air intake a lot of vehicles in the late 80s, early 90s had. You could pull a lever and get some fresh airflow. I looked at that and thought everything was glowing, like I could see all the melting snow on the floor and all around the floor where my feet were. I thought it was crazy bizarre, so I looked up to my father to tell him, and he was looking straight forward, white-knuckling the steering wheel, and all around the vehicle there was a white light, not really blinding bright, but like all the windows were frosted and it was daylight out. I kind of shouted, maybe more concerned than anything, "Dad?" I said this a few times, and then the light disappeared, and we were stopped just around the corner where his friend's headlights disappeared. He looked to be shocked and said, I think we lost Ron. Let's turn around here and see what happened." We turned around at a field approach right after the corner and drove 5 minutes back to the lake and his friend wasn't there. Then we drove home and his friend was there. The ice house was already backed into the spot next to our garage, and his friend seemed worried. The ice house was big and hard to back into the little spot with just one person, and Ron was already had it in place jacked up on blocks. He said he was coming to look for us since we were almost an hour late. Traveling back to the lake to look for his friend was only a 10-minute drive round trip. Pretty sure we all got abducted that night.
I've never shared this publicly. About 4 years ago, I woke up one Saturday morning after dreaming some foreign entity had come through my bedroom window and surrounded me. I had to be somewhere that morning and I went straight to the bathroom to wash my face, brush my teeth, and throw my hair up in a bun. I was going to teach a fitness class, so I didn't care what my hair looked like and I never checked the back of my hair, just don't care, lol. But for some reason that morning I felt this strong urge that I had to. On the back of my neck was a red triangle shape. Almost the color of a burn. I felt immediately panicked, which was weird for me, like my body knew. To make it even weirder, I'm married and my husband had fallen asleep on the couch that night and I had slept alone. I went to my bed to search for something that could explain it away. Nothing. I sleep on my stomach, quite literally cannot fall asleep on my back. I always sleep with my hair down, so there's no clip or hair accessory that could have done it, and I don't wear clothes. As I drove to teach, I was constantly checking, thinking maybe it has gone away. It didn't. It stayed for 3 days. The roads were empty that morning and the only car on the road in front of me was a license plate without any numbers, just my 3 exact initials.
My entire life until I went in the military I was an abductee. Then it all suddenly ended when I went in the military. Wherever I lived they would come there while I slept. I would be under their control. I could not talk or scream. The memories always ended when they took me to their vehicle. One of the last times I can remember was before I went in the military. I woke up with a bloody nose, covered in bruises and a bump under the palm of my hand. When I got to work I grabbed a tool and went into the bathroom. I dug out whatever was in my hand and flushed it. I remember for some reason out loud I said, "Leave me the f*** alone."
Thank you for watching. If you like to watch more of these videos, please leave a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to share to your friends and family. I'll see you in the next video.